Hi everyone, I'm Claire. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be reading and discussing some of the botanical horror novels on my TBR. I don't have any of the books with me right this second, but I'm going to be reading Saskia Nislow's Root Rot, Sarah Gailey's Spread Me, Danger Slater's House of Rot, and T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead. So just a quick overview. Botanical horror, for anyone who's unfamiliar, is horror that explores the terror and fright and fear induced by fungi and vegetation either invading bodies or homes or buildings, and kind of playing with the invasion of nature into human life. The first book, Saskia Nislow's Root Rot, follows 9 grandchildren, so they are cousins, siblings, they're all related, and it's following them as they're on a vacation at their grandfather's lake house. And some weird stuff starts happening. People blink upside down, mushrooms are bleeding, there's a bunch of different stuff going on related to fungi and the nature around this lake house that is very unsettling and spooky for these children. Spread Me follows a individual named Kinsey who is the leader of a special team that is exploring and investigating the cryptobiotic crust in the desert. One day they discover an organism that's very strange looking as a specimen in the desert, and this team decides to bring it into their lab because our main character Kinsey feels very strange feelings about it. And they begin to investigate this specimen, and things begin to happen. There's an infection of sorts, and this organism begins to spread, essentially. House of Rot follows a newlywed couple that has newly moved into an apartment that's a little bit of a fixer-upper. There's mold and fungi and kind of rot that they start to notice in this apartment. And that's happening alongside footsteps that they hear, weird phenomena taking place, and they, I guess, start to investigate and see where that goes. And the last book, What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, is kind of inspired by The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and it kind of investigates the nitty-gritty of the story and kind of adding character development and explanation for the reason for the fall of the House of Usher. So what happens to Madeline Usher? What happens to Roderick Usher? How is the fungal invasion, if you will, of their manor and their land? How does that relate to what's happening to their bodies and what's happening to their mind? And it follows a main character who is a veteran, a sworn soldier, who, with the help of a doctor and a mycologist, are going to kind of investigate these happenings. So if you can't tell by my explanation of these books, they're most likely going to have a lot in common with each other. There's a lot of overlap with fungus specifically. I originally thought that Spread Me was more sci-fi than it was horror, and I started reading a little bit and instantly realized I was pretty incorrect about that. It seems to lean more heavily in botanical stuff in my opinion, so I'm just kind of grouping it into this video because I have been wanting to read it and see what all of the hype is about. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to get into these books and let you know what I think when I'm finished. Hopefully they will be different enough that I will have something to talk about with each of them, but I have a feeling at the end of this I will not be able to touch a book about mushrooms for a very long time. Okay, so Saskia Nislow's Root Rot. Let's talk about it. It doesn't really have too much of a plot. It follows these 9 children who are, cousins, siblings, they're all related. None of them are given names, so it's kind of this, the voice in this novel is very ambiguous, and whenever there's speaking, it's from the perspective of us. So these 9 kids are all together as one entity, if you will. So it's from a very interesting perspective, and it's very ambiguous. It's extremely bleak. It is one of those novels where I finished it, and even if I had loved it, I don't know if I would ever read it again because it has a certain bleakness to it and darkness to it that makes it very eerie. And of course, that makes it atmospheric, but it makes it almost unenjoyable in how bleak and sad it is. I know I keep saying bleak, but I feel like that's the best word for it. So essentially, these 9 children have gotten together for this family vacation, family trip of sorts, where they've gone to their grandfather's vacation property, which is on a lake. We learned that this grandfather owns a lot of property in the area. He's pretty famous for being, we're supposed to assume, rich and influential, and kind of one of the hallmarks of this village or this town nearby. Anyway, some weird stuff starts happening to these 9 children. People's faces are starting to look uncanny. People's body parts move in weird ways. There are organisms that are almost like half human, half mushroom, or half fungi, or there's some sort of combination of human and plant mixing together to create these very uncanny images and imagery for these 9 children. I will say the horror in this is so unique, and even compared to Spread Me, I think so far of this video, out of the 3 books that I have read, this one surprised me the most. I felt like I didn't really know what I was gonna get going into it, and the ending is super creepy. And when you figure out what's going on with these children and this house and the setup that is driving the whole point of the novel, it has a message, and the symbolism is really strong. And I really appreciate that in books because I feel like I also got something from the book outside of just, enjoyment or for the plot. And while I think this is a good book, it is just very bleak, and there is this ambiguity that I don't fully understand as being useful in the book. I guess if we see the children as a unit and as this one unit instead of 9 individuals, that changes how the reader sees each individual child and how the reader sees their reactions to certain things. Because if they're not given names, it's almost like we can identify them as individuals because they have nicknames, like this is the liar, this is the one with the beautiful voice, but it's not individualistic enough for you to feel like you relate to any of the characters. So it's in this weird in-between state, if that makes any sense, regarding character development. I think it's gonna be a 3.5 for me. I wish I could rate it higher because I do think it's very unique and it's novel. There were just points in the book, especially in the first half, maybe 2/3, where I found that it was dragging a little bit. And again, going back to that bleakness, the bleakness made me want to stop reading. I don't know, I just wanted a little bit more from not the atmosphere, not the horror, but maybe the characters and their relationships with each other, if that makes sense. So I think I'm gonna give this a 4-star rating. I expected some weird stuff to go on going into this based on early reviews that I saw. I was not expecting the full extent of it, and I had a lot of fun reading this. It was very interesting. I think Spread Me compared to Root Rot, I almost had like the opposite problem with it. I think Spread Me gets a little bit of a higher rating because I think the book as a whole was more enjoyable. Like I actually wanted to get through it, I wanted to keep reading. But on the flip side of that, I think the messaging in certain choices wasn't as clear as I feel like it could have been. And maybe that's just a me thing, and maybe it was super clear to everyone else, and maybe I'm just dumb, but I think that it could have been a little bit clearer in that aspect. And outside of that, it just doesn't feel like a book, again, that I probably would ever read again. I really liked the imagery, and I thought it was creepy and weird, like weird. All three that I've read so far have that element of there's a fungus that is, or maybe not, it's not clear that it's a fungus here, maybe less so. And also it's not really a fungus here either. Or is it? Right, it's a virus, but there is like descriptions of fungi and the nature of the relationship between fungi and viri in this book as well. I don't really have anything else to say about this. I think it is not going to be for everyone. And I know a lot of people have given it 5 stars and they say it's like one of their favorite books, which I understand as well. I think this is one of those books where if it was longer and I was given more backstory, I think I would have liked it even more. It's like an adult version, like major adult version of Becky Chambers' To Be Taught If Fortunate. It has this kind of similar isolated team dynamics where everyone's really close, they're like a family unit, and being one big unit and being connected all together is important in both books. It's very important here because they kind of, this group of people kind of represent one together, and it's the separation of them and the dissolving of a team that kind of adds plot and meaning to this book as well. I think the representation in this is fantastic. I think these characters are really well thought out, and I felt like I could see and visualize every single one of them. I loved the little mini chapters in between the larger chapters that kind of gave some backstory on their team dynamics and how they all function and live together. The themes of loneliness and isolation. There's also this essence of brief commentary on life in a pandemic. And it's definitely a book I would read if you are completely, utterly okay with and fine with the content warnings. So this one, I think I'm only gonna give a 3. Different experience than the last 2 books. If I were to say that the first one was very bleak and hard for me to enjoy, and the second one felt a little too like overcrowded and dense in material, I think this one was just like the right amount of material, the right amount of plot. I just found it a little boring. There could have been something else going on with the plot to move it along. I didn't find it too bleak. I didn't find it too dark. I don't know. I just felt like maybe compared to the blurb or the description of the book, I feel like it could have been written in a way that felt more like this actual investigation of what's going on with the ushers, Roderick and Madeline. I like the main character. I think they're quite likable, and I like reading from their perspective. There is that T. Kingfisher characteristic of, funny dialogue and funny internal monologues and thought processes. I really like that about it. But in terms of plot, it just felt a little flat to me. I am going to continue on with the series. I have the other 2 books already, and they wouldn't really take up much time for me to read, but I will put that out there. Now on to House of Rot, which I will update you on when I finish. A few hours later, and I have finished House of Rot by Danger Slater. I think this is going to be another 4. It might be a 4.25 depending on how long I'm thinking about it and if it leaves a mark on me. I pretty much explained the entire plot at the beginning of this video, but essentially, like I said, we're following this newlywed couple. They've recently moved into this a rundown apartment. They're trying to save some money. The first night that they're staying at this new apartment, they hear footsteps in the hallway, and they quickly discover mold and rot that continues for the next couple of days and progressively gets worse and worse and worse. So there are a few other plot elements in there, and there's I wouldn't say like a big reveal, but there's something that happens towards the end of the book that kind of explains a little bit of what's going on. Other than that, that is pretty much the whole plot. I would say out of all the books that I read for this video, this one is probably the most I wouldn't say stereotypical of botanical horror, but if you were to ask me what book would I say summarizes the genre really well and would be the thing that I imagine when I think of botanical horror, I would say that this book fits that bill the best. What makes it special is that the book as an entire package is a metaphor of sorts for a bunch of different things. There's this discussion of what it means to be a millennial, or just anyone who's in that young adult to middle-aged area of life, and having this pressure of what your parents wanted for you and what your parents' parents wanted for them, and this generational cycle of repeating the same things and wanting the same things and being told that you must and you should not want certain things and strive for certain things in life. That cycle not only repeats within this apartment and within this household and within this unit, but outside the world around them. There are pieces of the text where we're given glimpses of the outside world, and the way that the characters respond to these moments just kind of play into the author's writing about these cyclical moments and these cyclical things about human nature and about humans in general. I don't really have anything negative to say about it, honestly. I'm just realizing with this video that I'm really not the perfect audience or the perfect reader for these types of books. I just can't really see myself giving a botanical horror novel 5 stars. Hopefully I find one eventually. I'm not somebody who's really drawn to these types of descriptions, and I'm realizing as well that in horror, I'm not somebody who is usually quick to pick up something that is in the nasty or gross part of the genre. Alright, I am done talking about botanical horror and mushrooms and everything of the sort, but I will see you in the next video, hopefully, and bye!